This is Baja SAE Shop Talk, the official podcast of the Baja SAE series. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. This is Mike Sorg, the podcast and video producer for the SAE CDS series. We got a big one for you this week. This week, we're going to talk about standards, SAE standards. What happens in the rest of SAE? Of course, if you've been listening to the news program that's on this feed or in the video version on YouTube, our friend Scott has been telling us that these were coming up. You're going to learn about the ins and outs of SAE International, not just what's happening out there in the field at your competitions. And we do have with us the co-host of the CDS Action News Series and the University Support Specialist over with the CDS series, Scott Schultz. We added specialists to make it sound fancier this week.
I know, I like it, and it's good to be back.
Yes, good to have you on the show in the podcast form, depending on what feed you're on here. Maybe it's the first time you've heard them in the general podcast with me along with them. So I'm very excited to have you back in the studio here, and we're going to learn a bit more about what are the ins and outs of SAE International. And we have two fantastic guests with us today. First of all, David Alexander, the Senior Director of Standards at SAE International. How are you doing, David?
Very well, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity. Looking forward to the conversation.
And then we also have Christian Thiele, the Ground Vehicle Standards Director at SAE International.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
So let's get right into it. Can you guys talk about the creation process development for standards development here at SAE?
Absolutely. So we actually have almost 10,000 active standards at SAE, and they're maintained by over 700 technical committees, working groups, and task forces. And these in turn comprise of over 14,000 experts and leaders from across the industries that we serve: the aerospace, automotive, and commercial vehicle sectors. So anybody that's listening here that is either an existing member of a committee, a contributor, or, and this is something we're really excited about, somebody that could become a member of one of these committees after the podcast, you're in great company. So here's how the process works. It all kicks off with the project initiation. So the committee confirms a project, assigns a writing team made up of experts from the committee, and then they set some deadlines and milestones for the project. The document draft is then developed through committee meetings, document working meetings, and alongside there's some great networking and community that we'll talk a lot more about as we go forward. But once a project leader that we call the document sponsor and his or her work group have fleshed out the document, they feel that it's in a good position to then take to the rest of the committee to get their views. They finalise the draft and prepare that final draft for balloting. The balloting process is really one of the most important parts of the process. This is giving that document to the committee, to the technical peers on that committee to deliberate and to make sure that when we put that standard out, it reflects the consensus of the stakeholder community, those all across industry, but also partners from the research community and government agencies. So the balloting process has to be of very, very high integrity. It's really important that it's very robust, very fair, very open, and very transparent. Now, once all of the comments have been resolved and we do come to that consensus, the document it then goes through the publication process, its formatting, we check all the copyrights, and then it's published. But it doesn't stop there, and it's really important to note that this process is not a line, but a circle. So after it's published, the important part is then that it's used. It's in the market. It's used by industry. It's used by regulatory agencies. And then through that usage, we gain by experience. So we get that really important, that vital feedback from the users that we can then bring into the next revision of the document. These are living documents, and they go through an iterative process of improvement in that particular area.
Wow, it's all very interesting, and a lot more goes into that than I would think a lot, but that's even more than I would even think. So what is the structural makeup of committees, and how do you solicit your members?
Yeah, and this is a vital part of how we are and what we are and how we do things. SAE standards development committees are organized in industry-specific areas and generally use the following structure. where we have executive standard committees. These are established councils and confirm and appoint council chairs. We have council chairs and that are also voting members. And we have an at-large membership at discretionary that are discretionary of voting members as well. We also have a council that has an oversight and management of their SAE standards programs areas. And then we have a membership at discretion of voting members, chairperson that is nominated by the outgoing chairperson for concurrence by the respective council members. And then we have established technical committees as well that support that council. And then ultimately, those technical committees are the ones that do the majority of the work and effort. Their focus is obviously on document development and maintenance and promotion within their scope of the charter that is designed for that technical committee. And then membership is including at-large members at the discretionary respective to the chair. The committee chair is nominated by the committee's voting members and forwarded to their respective council for review and approval. And then the chair establishes task forces and working groups that the chair appoints. The critical elements of standards development efforts, and for us, we solicit through events. We have more than 450 events that throughout the year, throughout all of our organization. And the other key areas, obviously, SAE.org /standards/development. This site is very intuitive. It shows what standards are being developed, organizational charts. It allows us to coordinate meetings, schedule and respond to call for experts. It allows us to join a committee and helps also in bringing new proposed standards and new technologies, i.e. Automated technology, etc. And it allows us also to access all of the lists of standards that are under development for all the members that want to participate. The committee responsibility is obviously preparing and developing those standards, maintaining and promoting all of those standards, and then relevant technical reports within their scope. So there will be technical reports that are delivered as well. And then complying with SAE and Executive Standards Committee, the ESC, is the oversight as well as the council and the committee policies and procedures can be accessed at that point.
So what is the process for people interested in joining the Standards Committee?
That is relatively easy in regards to they can access the website as mentioned earlier, SAE.org, standards.org. They can also reach out to ourselves and the committee chairs that are listed on that to say, hey, we have interest in perhaps electrification. We want to work on standards that have to do with charging. For instance, dealing with a specific J document. We can assign and direct them to those committees. They would have to, depending on what level they want to be part of that committee, be it if they're a voting member, they would have to join that committee concurrently 3 times in a row. And once they do it 3 times in a row, then they become part of the committee and then also have the ability to, based on the chair's recommendation, to become a voting member. These are all individuals. These are not company people, although they work for organizations and companies that have vested interest in making certain that their people are joining SAE standards to help drive industry standards. These are individuals in representing themselves as industry experts within these organizations. And so we try to help steer them and guide them based on their expertise, which committees would best benefit them. And that can be easily accessed again through SAE.org or through reaching out to our committee managers or myself included.
So we've been talking a lot about these committees and all that they do. Just wondering some of the challenges that they face.
So I want to try and turn that question on its head and really look at what are some of the opportunities for engaging with the with the committees. Committees necessarily need experience and expertise. There's a lot of technical expertise and technical integrity that goes into the standards, and that really underlines the reason why these standards are used, the trust that industry and government agencies have in relying upon the SAE consensus documents. However, This doesn't mean that committees should be comprised solely of 30-year-plus industry veterans. As we know, the workplace across the board, as well as within our particular mobility sectors, really is changing rapidly as there's an increase in retirements. But there's also a dynamic and exciting landscape of startups and new entrant companies challenging the markets, bringing increased innovation. And there's a great need for new ideas and innovation to come into the standards, to influence the standards, and of course the certification they support, as well as forming the next cohort of SAE committee members and leaders. So there's a great opportunity for people coming in, not just those in industry, also students to come in and start to develop those networks and start on that leadership path through the SAE committees.
How can students get involved, and are there opportunities in current committees, benefits for any of these students joining right now?
So I think there's opportunities in every single committee. Every single committee that we have at SAE are open to all interested parties, and we would really, really welcome the engagement of students in those committees. First of all, let's reiterate some of those benefits of participating with the with SAE standards that Christian had talked about. It's networking with a whole stakeholder set, so it's customers, it's partners, peers, suppliers, and regulators. It's gaining an overview of the industry rather than just a particular segment somebody's involved in. You're in a wider stakeholder set, and you're really gaining that overview of the wider industry that you're in. You're learning about the state-of-the-art technology. You're kept informed of the technical standardization landscape and progression. And also, you're not just contributing to a technical work. You're also, through that standard, influencing the global market by contributing to the standards development. So when it comes to students, this is really your opportunity to start this learning, to be growing within this network, growing your networks, developing your expertise actually alongside future employers and contributing at the same time. And we know that the industry members on that committee are really, really interested in seeing who's the talent coming up from universities that can sit alongside them in their professional careers.
Yes. So in addition to that, obviously SAE's technical standard development program and its global presence fosters international participation as well, improving product performance and safety, promoting global market acceptance of new technologies, i.e. automated driving, charging infrastructure, etc. And ultimately what it does to these standard committees that we want to bring people into help industry and organizations and companies within industry to reduce costs, because now you have a group and an organization that is setting those guidelines for development and design and development, which is pretty vital to industry.
What is the importance of students understanding and utilizing these standards?
It's really workforce readiness. In addition to all of those benefits about engaging with the standards, the knowledge of using those standards, which may actually come through the participation in one of our design competitions, an aero design or Formula SAE or Baja and so on. It's being able to be familiar with and use what is a key component of working in industry, or indeed in the research world or in government. The industry is increasingly relying on consensus documents, on consensus standards, as it works through research, design, production, certification, maintenance, and so on. So having that understanding of what standards are, how they're being used, sets you up very, very well for success entering into the professional world.
Absolutely, David. And along that line, too, it's providing a forum for resolving common issues that the industry is faced with. So you're with your peers and discussing and solving these issues and problems, which is so vital. And on top of it, working with other mobility professionals and industry groups and government regulatory bodies is part of the growing experience for developing personal growth and leadership. So we're helping that along the way. And then obviously you are continuously staying up to date with the technologies and the emerging space, with current activities that are happening in the industry, and allowing yourself to develop those key contacts with key customers, suppliers, and industry professionals, which is vital as well.
I'm sensing a lot of talk about, kind of that community around everything that seems to be ingrained in all of this.
Absolutely. The output of the standards committee is a standard, but of course, but what's even more important to those that are participating is that community aspect, the network. One of the greatest insights I had very, very early on in my SAE career was talking to an engineering manager at Airbus, he was a sponsor of documents. He was a key committee participant. He actually led a couple of our technical committees, and now supports us in his after he's retired from industry. But he said that yes, that the standards are why we're there, but the real value he got was that he was able to engage with his peers. So he was at Airbus, and through his engagement in the committee and the community that was fostered through that committee, he was able to pick up the phone to his counterpart at Boeing and talk about a technical issue that they might commonly have, so they could work together and solving the issue together. And I think that's just a tremendous value of that community that we convene and we bring together through the standards table.
That's great. Nobody's working in a vacuum in this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we recognize and understand right there is people always ask, so why are you standardizing? Why do you recruit people to come in and standardize? Well, it has to do with our mantra at the end of the day. We want to enhance safety. We want to create common language from a global aspect, improve the environment, harmonize global markets, facilitate trade through regulations. But more importantly, too, it truly increases productivity in processes for industry and the companies within that industry. It makes engineering easier. It reduces costs. It truly permits common interfaces with other industries and cross industries, i.e., for example, looking at the future of automated driving. You need not only now the vehicle, but you also need the infrastructure around that vehicle to communicate with that vehicle. So it brings other industries together to unite and communicate in a harmonious way, and then at the end of the day, deliver a safe product through standardization.
Very cool. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. For everybody that's listening to the podcast, wherever they may be, remind me again, where is the website that people can check out more information or potentially apply?
SAE.org, and that is really easy. And then just follow the standards link, and they can peruse there and just go throughout the website. It's very intuitive.
Can you give an example of these, new technologies coming up that the standards are really important for, in that aspect of being on the same page as we're developing and moving forward?
Absolutely, yes. So I think firstly, it's important to note that standards are no longer just harmonizing or stabilizing existing designs and processes. The standards table that we have at SAE is now being used to advance technologies, providing an agreed baseline on which people will innovate. And this is also critical in increasing time to market, where standards are developed collaboratively across industries and directly to support the regulatory framework. And that in turn gives industry and research partners, who are the innovators, the opportunity to play a direct role in partnership with the government. And also, as we will talk in more detail about particular technologies and standards for these markets, another key initiative at SAE right now is cross-sector collaboration. So for the first time, we are very deliberately bringing together the technical community through our standards committees to share lessons learned, to identify common requirements, build on existing solutions, and diversify supply chains. So some examples of new technologies being addressed in our aerospace standards program include electrification, particularly supporting advanced air mobility, air taxis and so on. And actually on that point, a lot of what's being done there in electrification is being taken and built on from the tremendous advances that have been made in the ground vehicle sectors. In addition to that, there are other alternative fuels and hydrogen. There's additive manufacturing or 3D printing. There's a huge amount around digital transformation and the role of data that can support health management, prognostics, and other areas. Artificial intelligence and machine learning is another key enabler to that we're standardizing now. And then that also goes in to support automated and unmanned systems, the processes, the mechanisms, but also critically the safety case. And of course, all of that needs to be underpinned by cybersecurity. And I'll let Christian tell you about some of the exciting things in the ground vehicle area, but it will be interesting to see where the commonalities are between those sectors.
Yes, and thanks, David. At the end of the day, SAE Standards have a huge advanced technology focus right now. Obviously, we understand that we still have brakes, we still have certain materials that are pretty standard throughout, and don't forget about the motor oil. We get all of that, and we have to maintain those. But at the end of the day, we're also focused on wireless charging, driver and vehicle interface. We're looking at moving forward to driver monitoring systems down the road. Electronic system reliability is critical. We also focus heavily on vehicle electronics and cybersecurity, understanding that a vehicle nowadays has more line of code than an F-16 fighter. That is how advanced these vehicles are becoming that we sit in and drive around every day. We're looking at intelligent transport systems, and that obviously leads into the communication with the connected vehicles to not only vehicle to vehicle, but vehicle to infrastructure and vehicle to people and other types of mobile devices. We have mobility for elderly and persons of disability that we're focusing on. Micro and shared mobility is vitally critical. And obviously everybody is somewhat in tune with electrification, which is maybe not as glamorous and as exciting as an automated system, but it has its challenges as well, especially from an infrastructure point of view, from charging point of view, from the protocol of charging, and from the interoperability with charging and with the customer and with the vehicle and with the electric space. It is, in the utility space, it is quite challenging. And those are some of the exciting fronts that we are working on from the emerging technology space.
Incredible. There's a lot going on. I love seeing what's coming out of this. Of course, seeing what's happening and developing at these competitions and the conversations about these kinds of standards and the conferences and everything. It is a really important thing. So a nice look. Thank you so much, guys, for introducing us to these concepts.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Scott, did you learn a little bit something about the standards practices today?
I learned so much.
Yes.
I knew, I would say, embarrassingly little for working at SAE about this, and now I feel like I belong when I go into the office now.
There you go. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And of course, if you're checking us out for the first time, or if you're over on the YouTube stream for this or something, make sure you do subscribe so you do not miss an episode of the SAE CDS podcast. And of course, hear Scott's lovely voice on the monthly news update as we head through the seasons. Thank you so much. And until next time, stay safe out there.
Thanks for listening to Baja SAE Shop Talk. As always, we want to hear from you, so email bajasae@sae.org. The show notes for this episode, as well as all others, can be found at www.bajasae.net/podcast. Stay safe, and we'll catch you next episode.